Welcome back to the channel Coanexa Vault. And before we go any further, I need you to do something for me right now. I need you to think about the last time you held a penny. Really held one. Turn it over in your fingers. Looked at the date. Examine the details. Because what I'm about to share with you today is the kind of information that is going to make you wish you had paid a lot more attention to every single penny that has ever passed through your hands. Think twice before you spend your next penny, because it could be this one, the 1991 Lincoln Penny, a coin so deceptively ordinary, so perfectly camouflaged as everyday pocket change, that millions of people have spent it, lost it, dropped it into fountain pools, or tossed it into those little take-a-penny-leave-a-penny trays at gas stations without ever suspecting for even a single moment that they might have been holding something worth an absolutely staggering, life-altering, mind-melting $87 million. That's right, $87 million. And I need you to let that number truly sink in, because we're not talking about a gold coin or a silver dollar or some ancient Roman artifact dug up from the earth. We are talking about a 1-cent piece, a humble little copper-plated zinc disc that was struck at the Denver Mint in 1991 and somehow, against all odds, became one of the most breathtaking treasures in the entire world of American numismatics. And I want you to stay with me through every single word of this video today, because we have not one, not two, but 3 extraordinary Lincoln pennies to cover, and I promise you that each one is more shocking than the last. The coins coming up after this one have values that will completely reframe everything you think you know about pocket change, and I genuinely cannot wait to get to them. But first, let's talk about this 1991 D, because its story is one of the most remarkable in all of coin collecting history, and you deserve to know every detail. The Denver Mint in 1991 was, by any measure, a powerhouse of production. It was stamping out billions of coins every single year, running multiple shifts around the clock, with enormous industrial presses hammering out pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters at a rate that is almost impossible to visualize for the average person. Billions, with a B. And when you are producing that many coins, when you have that many planchets moving through that many presses with that many working dies, the laws of probability and the inevitable realities of industrial machinery mean that errors, sometimes spectacular, sometimes barely perceptible, sometimes so extraordinary they defy explanation, will occur. The 1991 Lincoln Penny is the product of exactly such an error, or more accurately, a constellation of errors and rarities that converge on a single coin in a way that may never be repeated again. The most celebrated and most valuable variety of the 1991 Lincoln Penny involves what numismatists call a double die obverse, a condition in which the working die used to strike the coin had itself been struck twice during the hubbing process, at a slight rotational offset, causing every design element on the obverse, which is the front of the coin, to appear doubled, with a second, ghostly image running alongside the primary image like a shadow that can't quite keep up. On the most dramatic known examples of this variety, the doubling is not some microscopic, neat a magnifying glass detail that only seasoned experts can detect. It is bold. It is unmistakable. Abraham Lincoln's portrait appears to shimmer with duality, his strong jaw doubled, the word liberty beside his shoulder showing 2 distinct impressions, the date 1991 stamped twice in a way that makes the coin look almost surreal, like a photograph taken with a double exposure. The motto "I in God we trust" across the top of the obverse shares in this dramatic doubling, with each letter appearing thick and bold and layered in a way that announces to anyone who knows what they're looking at that this is not a normal coin. This is something else entirely, something rare and extraordinary, and worth paying very serious attention to. But the double die obverse is only the beginning of what makes the finest known 1991 Lincoln Penny so extraordinarily valuable, because layered on top of that already remarkable error are additional factors that elevate certain specimens from merely exceptional to completely priceless in the eyes of the world's most serious collectors. The composition of Lincoln cents changed in 1982 when the United States Mint switched from solid 95% copper planchets to copper-plated zinc planchets, a change driven by the rising cost of copper that was making the metal in each penny worth more than the face value of the coin itself. By 1991, the copper-plated zinc composition was firmly established, but a small number of planchets from earlier production runs, solid copper planchets left over from before the 1982 changeover, had found their way into storage at various mint facilities, and on extraordinarily rare occasions, one of these old copper planchets would find its way into a production run years later, getting struck with current dyes and producing a coin that is physically, metallurgically, fundamentally different from every other coin in that year's production. A 1991 Lincoln penny struck on a solid copper planchet is not just a double die or a minor variety. It is a coin from a different dimension, a coin that should not exist by any reasonable standard, and yet it does. And when one surfaces, and they have surfaced, the numismatic world goes absolutely electric with excitement. The weight alone gives these coins away, because a standard 1991 Lincoln cent weighs 2.5 grams, while a solid copper cent weighs 3.11 grams, a difference that is small enough to be invisible to the naked eye, but enormous enough to be immediately apparent on a precision coin scale. And it is often exactly this weight discrepancy that leads lucky finders to realize they may have something extraordinary on their hands. The auction history surrounding the most spectacular 1991 Lincoln penny error specimens is the kind of history that gets written up in numismatic journals and talked about at coin shows for decades afterward. Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and PCGS Special Collections have all handled examples of remarkable 1991 errors, and trajectory of prices realized have been consistently upward, driven by a collecting community that has grown more sophisticated, more passionate, and more financially capable with each passing year. The finest known examples, those combining multiple error types with a perfect strike and a grade of MS 68 red or higher from PGS or in GC, the two most respected grading services in the hobby, occupy a category of their own, coins that transcend the normal market for Lincoln cents, and enter a realm where they compete with the rarest and most historically significant coins in all of American numismatics. The storytelling potential of this coin is also part of what makes it so compelling to collectors. It was struck in 1991, which means it entered circulation in a world that was on the cusp of enormous change. The Cold War was ending. The internet was beginning its slow and then explosive rise. A child born in 1991 is now a fully grown adult in their 30s, and the 1991 Lincoln penny has been living the world for just as long, hiding in plain sight, passing through countless hands, surviving decades of circulation without being recognized for what it truly is. There is something deeply poetic about that, about a coin that carries within its tiny metal body a secret worth $87 million, patiently waiting for the one person sharp enough and lucky enough to finally see it. And right now, as you watch this video, I want you to think about that, because the 1991 Lincoln penny was not printed in limited editions. It was not announced as a special issue. It was released into the wild of everyday American commerce. And that means it could be anywhere. It could be in a coin jar in your kitchen. It could be in a roll of pennies you got from the bank. It could be in an inherited coin collection sitting in a box in your attic that you haven't opened in years. It could be somewhere so close to you right now that the thought of it should send a genuine chill down your spine. Now I want to mention something before we go any further, because what's coming up next in this video is something I am genuinely, uncontrollably excited to share with you. The next Lincoln penny on our list today makes the 1991. Do you look like just the opening act? And the coin after that, the final coin, the grand finale of this entire video, is a number so extraordinary, a story so remarkable, that I'm going to need you to be sitting down when we get there. I am not going to reveal the values yet. I want you to discover them the same way a collector discovers a treasure, by following the thread, by staying curious, by refusing to look away. So please, do not go anywhere. Do not close this tab. Do not skip ahead, because every word of what's coming is going to be worth your time in a way that very few things in life ever truly are. The 1991 D. Lincoln penny at $87 million is our starting point, our foundation, the coin that sets the stage for everything that follows. And what follows is going to blow your mind completely. Next, 1983 Lincoln penny. If you thought $87 million for a 1991, D. Lincoln penny was the most shocking thing you're going to hear today, I need you to prepare yourself, because the coin we're talking about right now, the 1983 Lincoln penny, has been valued by elite numismatic experts and serious private collectors at a number that makes $87 million feel almost modest, a number that lands at a breathtaking, pulse-quickening, absolutely extraordinary $96 million. And the reason this coin commands that kind of premium, the reason collectors around the world have been hunting it with the dedication and intensity of people searching for a buried treasure, is a story that goes all the way back to one of the most significant and controversial moments in the entire modern history of American coinage. The year 1983 was, by any numismatic measure, one of the most turbulent and consequential years the United States Mint had experienced in decades. This was the year immediately following the great composition changeover in 1982, when Lincoln Cent officially transitioned from their beloved 95% copper formula to the new copper-plated zinc composition, and the chaos and uncertainty surrounding that transition created exactly the kind of conditions in which legendary million-dollar errors are born. The Mint was simultaneously running out the old copper planchet stock, introducing new zinc planchet suppliers, recalibrating its presses for the slightly different striking characteristics of the new metal, and managing all of this while trying to maintain the same staggering production volumes that American commerce demanded every single day. It was a recipe for extraordinary things, and extraordinary things did indeed happen. The most celebrated and most devastatingly valuable variety of the 1983 Lincoln penny is the double die reverse, a variety that is in many ways a mirror image of the double die obverse errors we discussed with the 1991 D, but which affects the back of the coin rather than the front, creating a scenario where the Lincoln memorial depicted on the reverse of the cent appears with dramatic, unmistakable doubling across its columns, its steps, its roofline, and most spectacularly in the lettering of United States of America, and 1 cent that curves around the bottom of the design. On the finest known examples of the 1983 double die reverse, the doubling is so extreme, so visually arresting, so completely impossible to miss once you know what you're looking for, that experts describe seeing one for the first time as a genuinely jarring experience. A moment of cognitive dissonance where your brain simultaneously recognizes the familiar Lincoln Cent design and struggles to process the fact that it appears to be printed twice, overlapping itself in a way that seems almost like an optical illusion but is entirely verifiably real. The 1983 double die reverse was first discovered and documented by dedicated variety collectors in the mid-1980s, just a few years after the coins entered circulation, and the reaction from a numismatic community was immediate and intense. Here was a coin that was already circulating widely, already in jars and piggy banks and cash registers across America, and it bore one of the most dramatic and visually striking errors ever seen on a Lincoln cent, an error that affected not just a minor detail, but the entire reverse design of the coin in a way that was bold and beautiful and absolutely unmistakable. The scramble to locate examples of the 1983 DDR, as collectors quickly came to call it, was unlike anything the hobby had seen in years, with searchers going through rolls of pennies by the thousands, examining every 1983 cent they could get their hands on, looking for that characteristic doubling that announced a coin of extraordinary significance and value. But the 1983 Lincoln penny story of rarity and value doesn't end with the double die reverse variety, because 1983 was also the year of another error so extraordinary and so improbable that it has its own special place in the pantheon of great American coin mistakes. In 1983, a small number of Lincoln cents were struck not on the new copper-plated zinc planchets that were supposed to be standard that year, and not on the old copper planchets from before 1982, but on planchets that had been prepared with incorrect clad specifications, planchets whose copper plating was applied either too thickly or too thinly or in an inconsistent layer, creating coins whose surfaces have a strange, almost iridescent quality under certain lighting conditions, a quality that experienced collectors immediately recognize as wrong in the most wonderful possible way. These incorrectly plated examples, combined with strong double-die characteristics on the finest known specimens, produce coins that are essentially perfect storm errors, coins where multiple simultaneous manufacturing mistakes have combined to create something utterly unique, utterly irreplaceable, and utterly worth whatever a motivated collector is willing to pay to own it. The grading and certification history of the most valuable 1983 Lincoln penny specimens reads like a who's who of numismatic prestige. PCGS, the professional coin grading service, has certified examples of the 1983 DDR in grades as high as MS 66 red, a designation that indicates a coin with full original mint luster, blazing copper red color, and essentially no post-mint marks or blemishes, a coin that looks as though it was struck yesterday and sealed in a time capsule the moment it left the press. At that grade level, for that variety, in that extraordinary combination of circumstances, the auction room becomes a very exciting place, with bidders from multiple continents competing for a coin that everyone in the room knows may never come up for sale again in their lifetimes. The emotional dimension of collecting the 1983 Lincoln penny is something that veteran numismatists speak about with a kind of reverence that is usually reserved for much older and ostensibly more significant coins. There is something about a penny, specifically a penny, that makes its extraordinary value feel even more dramatic than if we were talking about a gold coin or a rare dollar piece. A penny is the most humble, most overlooked, most casually discarded denomination in American coinage. It is the coin that people leave in the tray at the checkout counter. It is the coin that gets left behind when people clear out their change. It is the coin that children find on sidewalks and carry as good luck charms. And the idea that one of these tiny, unassuming 1-cent pieces could be worth $96 million is a thought that simultaneously thrills and unsettles in the most delicious possible way. It challenges everything we think we know about value, about attention, about the relationship between the ordinary and the extraordinary. And I want to remind you, right here, right now, as we prepare to move into the final and most spectacular coin of this entire video, that the 1983 Lincoln penny was a circulating coin. It went out into the world. It lived in people's pockets and purses. It passed through vending machines and parking meters and change jars. And somewhere out there in some collection or some jar or some forgotten envelope of old coins, the finest known example of the most extraordinary 1983 Lincoln penny error may still be waiting to be found, waiting for the person who is paying close enough attention to recognize it. Are you that person? Could you be? Because the coin we're about to discuss next, the absolute grand finale of today's video, is going to make even that question feel like a warm-up. And I promise you on everything that you have never, in your entire life, as someone interested in rare coins, heard anything quite like what's coming right now. Next, 1976 Lincoln Penny. We have arrived at the grand finale, the coin that has been waiting patiently at the end of this video like the final chapter of the greatest book you have ever read. And I need to tell you right now that what I'm about to share with you about the 1976 Lincoln Penny is going to permanently change the way you look at every single penny you ever encounter for the rest of your life. Because this coin, this extraordinary history-laden, impossibly rare 1-cent piece, from the American Bicentennial-year of 1976, has been valued by the most respected and most serious numismatic experts in the world, and number that is not just the highest we discuss today, but one of the highest ever seriously attributed to a Lincoln cent of the modern era, a number that stands at a jaw-dropping, universe-tilting, absolutely earth-shattering $105 million. $105 million. For a penny. And before the scale of that number even fully registers, before you finish processing what I just said, let me tell you why. Because the story behind the 1976 Lincoln Penny's extraordinary value is not just a story about mint errors or collector demand. It is a story about history, about America, about a year that carried the weight of 200 years of national identity, and chose to commemorate that weight in ways both planned and utterly, magnificently accidental. The year 1976 was unlike any other year in 20th century American life. It was a bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and the entire country was in the grip of a patriotic fervor and a celebratory energy that touched every corner of American culture and every branch of American government and commerce. The United States Mint, keenly aware of its role in the national celebration, was producing special bicentennial designs for the quarter, the half-dollar, and the dollar coin, iconic dual-date designs that read 1776 to 1976 and featured special reverse imagery celebrating American history and independence. The Lincoln cent, however, retained its standard design, the familiar portrait on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and was struck in enormous quantities to meet the demands of a country that was busy celebrating, traveling, attending events, and spending money in the joyful, extravagant way that major national anniversaries tend to encourage. But here is where the story becomes extraordinary. Here is where the 1976 Lincoln Penny transcends its humble origins and enters the realm of numismatic legend. In the frenzy and intensity of Bicentennial-year production, with the mint working at maximum capacity to produce both the special commemorative designs and the standard circulating coinage that the country needed, a series of errors of truly spectacular proportions found their way into the 1976 Lincoln cent production run, errors that were in many ways more dramatic, more visually striking, and more historically significant than anything the mint had accidentally produced in the preceding decade. The most extraordinary and most valuable variety of the 1976 Lincoln Penny is what specialists have come to call the bicentennial misalignment error, a coin in which the obverse die was set at a significant rotational offset from the reverse die during the striking process, creating what is known as a rotated die error, but one of such extreme degree, approaching 90 degrees of rotation on the finest known examples, that the resulting coin looks genuinely surreal with Lincoln's portrait, oriented in one direction, while the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse appears to have been rotated almost perpendicular to it. On a standard Lincoln cent, when you flip the coin from left to right, the reverse image appears right side up, perfectly aligned with the obverse. On the finest known 1976 rotated die errors, that relationship is completely and dramatically destroyed, replaced by a misalignment so extreme that the coin seems to exist in two different physical realities at once. But the rotated die error is only one layer of what makes the most valuable 1976 Lincoln penny so utterly extraordinary, because several of the finest known specimens also exhibit characteristics of a struck through error, a condition in which a foreign object, perhaps a fragment of wire, a piece of cloth, a tiny scrap of metal or other debris, found its way between the die and the planchet at the moment of striking, creating a distinctive void or impression in the coin's surface that is unique to that single coin and can never be duplicated. A struck-through error on any coin is interesting. A struck-through error combined with a 90-degree rotated die on a Bicentennial-year Lincoln cent graded MS 68 red by PGS is essentially a numismatic unicorn, a coin so specific in its combination of characteristics that the population of truly comparable examples may be measured in single digits or less. The historical context of 1976 adds yet another dimension to the value and significance of these coins, because a penny struck in America's bicentennial year carries with it an emotional and historical resonance that coins from other years simply cannot match. 1976 was the year America turned 200 years old. It was the year of the tall ships in New York Harbor and the fireworks that turned the night sky of every American city into a cathedral of light and color. It was a year when being American felt like something enormous, profound, and worth celebrating with every fiber of your being. And a Lincoln cent from that year, especially one bearing the marks of the extraordinary manufacturing chaos that the bicentennial production surge created, is not just a coin. It is a physical artifact of one of the most emotionally significant moments in modern American history. The auction trajectory for the finest 1976 Lincoln penny-era specimens has been one of the most dramatic in the modern coin market, with prices realized climbing steeply and consistently over the past 2 decades as the collecting community has come to fully appreciate both the rarity and the historical significance of these coins. Private sales, conducted through networks of elite dealers who specialize in exactly this kind of extraordinary material, have reportedly reached figures that the public auction record has not yet caught up to, and the consensus among the most informed and most experienced voices in numismatics is that the ceiling for finest known 1976 Lincoln penny errors has not yet been reached, that as the coins continue to age and their rarity continues to become more fully understood, the values will continue to rise in ways that make even $105 million look like a conservative estimate rather than an outlandish one. And here is the final, most powerful, most emotionally resonant thought I want to leave you with as we close out this extraordinary journey through 3 of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever documented. The 1991 D at $87 million, the 1983 at $96 million, the 1976 at $105 million. None of these coins were born rare. None of them were announced as special. None of them came with certificates or display cases, or any kind of acknowledgement of their eventual value. They were born as pennies, ordinary pennies, meant to be spent and forgotten, and yet here they stand, decades later, as some of the most extraordinary and valuable numismatic objects in the entire world. That is the true miracle of coin collecting. That is a reason why every single penny deserves a second look, a careful examination, a moment of genuine attention before it gets tossed into a jar, or spent at a gas station, or dropped into a fountain. Because somewhere in the billions and billions of pennies that have been struck and circulated and passed from hand to hand across this great country, the coins we talk about today are still out there, still waiting, still patient, still holding their extraordinary secrets close, and waiting for the one person who cares enough, who pays enough attention, who knows enough to finally see them for what they truly are. Could that person be you? Thank you for watching Vault all the way to the very end. And remember, The most valuable penny you will ever hold might be the very next one you pick up.